Good Sunday morning, I'm Jaden Jefferson and welcome to this week's Community Focus. Yesterday, the group Midstory held an exhibition at the main library branch in downtown Toledo, all about climate change, the impacts right here in our backyard happening now and the ones that will be happening in the future. I spoke to two members of the group about this project, which is also available online. Take a look.
My name is Logan Sander. I am the editorial director here at Midstory.
I am the creative director at Midstory. My name is Ruth Chang.
First, just kind of tell me how you guys got the idea to tackle climate change.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. You know, we talk about climate change a lot on a national scale, right? I mean, we're talking, a lot of these conversations are centered on the coasts, and we realize there hasn't really been a lot of public conversation about here in Ohio and how it will affect us. We talk a lot about wildfires in California, how areas of the East Coast are going to be underwater, but actually right here in Ohio, it could be a really big issue. So that's really where we wanted to start the conversations. And secondly, I would say really wanting to find a common ground in that conversation, knowing a lot of these conversations can be, politicized, can be very divisive. We really wanted to find a common ground on what really affects us all and how we move forward.
Yeah, it's really important to have that kind of perspective when you can actually see it happening in your community. And that's the thing I think people are lacking, is the understanding that everyone's affected by it because it is a global problem. And so kind of talk to me about some different ways you guys are highlighting local impact.
Yeah, I think, so actually it's funny what you were just talking about. We're standing in front of a window here, and we're actually at the entrance of the exhibit right now. But really the whole idea behind the exhibit is that climate change is a lot closer than you think. And so right in our backyard, which as you see right now, this is sort of the interior of the house. When you go through the rest of the exhibit, you'll enter into the backyard. But that's kind of the whole theme. And we're looking at things, we typically think of it just as solely an environmental problem, but it's across all sectors that we're going to have to adapt and change no matter what political or social background you come from. It's going to be affecting us all. So we're looking at it from perspectives of economics. We're looking at it, how it might impact the agricultural sector, right? We're looking, of course, at environmental factors like biodiversity, but really across the board, things that matter to us all.
Yeah, and the thing is, when we talk about this issue, you mentioned it before, it tends to be a tense conversation, and it really shouldn't be. I mean, especially when you think about the fact that there are economic impacts, and then of course you just have the impacts that happen in your community. So for people that are maybe hesitant or don't understand how they can get involved and actually make change, where should they start?
Yeah, I think, and maybe Ruth can speak to this too, but I think it really starts with being educated on the issue, right? And seeing how it impacts us and how it will impact our communities. But maybe you can talk about the importance of being educated on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think being educated on this is the beginning, right? Education starts also with communication with other people. And I think that's actually, we're in the Midwest, we're at the center of that conversation, with agriculture, with the increasing intensity of our storms and how that affects our economics. I think that we're actually really well situated to learn from one another and to start that conversation and to learn from speaking. And hopefully our exhibit does that, and also our upcoming event will help do that too.
Yeah, and in terms of experience, we just went through a pretty bad heat wave. On top of it, we've had stronger storms during this summer. Yeah, this is unusual, and I think that over time you start to notice that. And so in terms of this exhibit, what are the main points that you hope to instill in people?
Well, I think that what we really want to talk about is how this is really beyond any sort of agenda. I mean, as we move forward to think about solutions, to think about what our future looks like together, I mean, to us, that's really beyond any kind of political agenda, right? And I think for us, it's talking about how do we adapt, how do we change, how do we think about what's next for us? Also, that, really Ohio and the Midwest will be an up-and-coming place for people in a different climate future, right? I mean, when we're thinking about, of course, we will have impacts here. We are experiencing those impacts, but we're also on the shore of Lake Erie and the Great Lakes. We have 20% of the world's surface fresh water right here at our fingertips. We are in a location that will be the next place to be. And that means that, of course, as much as we value that, we also need to reconcile with a lot of the changes that we're going to be facing, whether, like you said, it's heat or more severe storms. We're thinking about how do we build infrastructure for the next generation. All of these are real considerations that we have to be thinking about.
And one thing that comes to mind was 2014, the water crisis, because people understood what the issue was, but they don't know if they exactly understood how bad it was and that it wasn't a one-time thing.
Yeah, the water crisis was a big deal for Toledo. And I sometimes wonder, I hope that we haven't forgotten it 10 years later.
We had to put grocery bags on our faucets, guys. It was pretty bad.
People were paying, like $30, $40, $50 for a case of water driving into Michigan. Like, it was crazy. And, even beyond that immediate impact, the last 10 years, we're still facing issues with that, even though they haven't made as big of news. They maybe haven't had as much impact on our day-to-day life as we thought they did in 2014, but it's still an issue. And I think as we think about Toledo's future, our waterfront is our key feature, and we're looking to, take care of that, to think about what that looks like in the coming years too.
And one thing you brought up that was really interesting, we talked about money, because this is really the key motivator. This is like the last resort to motivate people, is the money, because we're currently having to fix infrastructure that's really old. Hundreds of millions of dollars this is going to cost our community. Do we really want that for the next generation?
Well, I think that's time to make that choice, right? And so part of the exhibit actually talks about the economics of what climate change means for Ohio, right? What are the specific challenges that our communities are facing, and how do we face that today, and how much money are we willing to spend? And if we don't spend that money today, what is the cost going to be in the very near future?
Yeah, I could see it going up for sure. And obviously this exhibit is just one part of making the case, to people that this will be something that you're going to fill in your pocketbooks, but you're also going to feel those impacts as long as we continue to just stand by and let it happen.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a really good consideration. And, I think that if we move past some of the, politics of the conversation, we are all feeling the effects in different ways, right? Like, we're feeling the effects in our pockets, as or if you're a farmer and you're, producing crops that feed the nation, you're feeling the effects of extreme weather. If you're an average person who's going to the grocery store and paying double the price for, green bell peppers or whatever it is, those are real impacts we're feeling, right? And so how do we think about what that looks like in the future? That's something I think we all can agree upon. We all can find that common ground as we move forward.
And the great part about this exhibit is that it is accessible. You don't have to come in person. There is the digital aspect as well.
Yeah, so we really wanted this to have lasting impact, right? So this whole project, which was really graciously funded by the Midwest Big Data Hub, as well as some additional support from the Community Foundation through First Solar, we really wanted this to be something people could access in many different ways. I think accessibility is a huge part of the conversation because, part of it's that when we talk about, like, in climate issues, for example, not everyone's at the table. And that's, I think, a huge root also of the divisions that are sort of coming to the forefront, in today's conversations. And so our project has a couple of different forms. We actually started with some really cool interactive data stories where you can delve into and interact with maps and data and stories and interviews, from experts, from residents, from farmers, from all kinds of people, tackling these issues from these different perspectives like agriculture, biodiversity, economics. Those are all online at midstory.org/colors of climate change. And it can also be accessed via our website. We have this physical gallery space, which is in such a lovely location. The downtown library here is really a gem and is a really accessible location. You can come in, experience it physically. All ages are welcome to come explore this exhibit. And then, of course, we also have a virtual version, like a 3D exploration of this exhibit online. So if you go to that same webpage, you can also explore it through a sort of 3D way to see the exhibit, even from the comfort of your home.
So there are no excuses.
There are no excuses.
Well, I appreciate you both joining me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that's this week's Community Focus. I'm Jaden Jefferson, and have a great week.